Hidan. Hidan, the immortal member of the Akatsuki, the truly immortal one, I would say. As his partner had to do other things, right? But this guy was a guy who was just basically a runaway shinobi from I don't know which land. I think he was from the land of like grass or not grass. I'm trying to remember what land he was from. I don't remember what land he was from. But he was a part of a cult. I don't know how many members are a part of it, but it was the way of Joshing. So basically, in exchange for lives, he can become immortal. As long as he kills for Joshing, he can remain immortal. And basically, those statements are true, but Joshing and all this, nobody knows who this person is or thing is, or how these powers are given out because he's the only person known to do this shit. And he was running around in the ninja world just killing people. Nobody could kill him either. Even if they cut his head off, he could re-stitch his head back on and, other things. Losing a limb, no problem. He could take all kind of pain, and just be like, damn, why the fuck are you stabbing me in the chest? That shit hurt. And he fought against the Akatsuki members, and they're like, we would just fight this guy forever. But then they were like, well, we can always chop his body parts up and scatter them to the four corners where, he can't do shit. He might be alive, but he can't do a fucking thing anymore. We'll have to do that. You join us or we do shit like that too. This guy called Kakazu is going to be your partner. It says Conan and, Hitachi and Kakazu was there too to see that this guy was immortal. He even tried to kill Kakazu, but Kakazu was like, I'm kind of immortal too because I have hearts in my chest. And you are kind of stupider than I am. I like money, but as long as you don't slow me down with making my money and we can hunt these tail beasts together, that's what we do in the Akatsuki, you'll be my partner. And they were the immortal duo. So he went after tail beasts with Kakazu. These two ended up taking down both of the female tail beasts. Fu, the seven tails. I think she was the one from the land of grass, but they ended up catching her. But then they ended up catching Yugito Ni, the two tails. They trapped her, and then he defeated her. He didn't kill her, but he left her, close to death, so they could, attract the tail beast. But then they hunted down Chiriku. He helped Kakazu kill Chiriku so Kakazu could have some money. And then also he got to kill somebody so that he can remain immortal and everything else. His fucked up cult ritual, whatever. So he could keep doing that shit. But he then goes to the collection office with Kakazu. And he's waiting outside. And then he's stabbed by two, shinobi from the leaf. And then Asuma attacks him. Shikamaru's there too. He's fighting. They find out that he's immortal. But then they also find out that he has a technique where he can link his body with other people through blood. Because Asuma's attack actually, it didn't get reflected back at him, but essentially Hidan became a voodoo doll. He made himself a voodoo doll. And then any attack that he threw at Hidan was also going to hit him too. So the Black Ash Jutsu hit Asuma as well, because the blood linked their bodies together. He was able to get some awesome blood, lick it, and then he was, able to perform a ritual, a circle with a triangle in the middle of it. And then he was able to do that. And then he, to kill Asuma, he did. But then they went back to the Akatsuki hideout, sealed, the two tails away. And they were like, let's go to the leaf, and try to get the nine tails. We've already done our fucking job well, but, we're pretty damn good. So they got on their way. And when they got on their way, they were met by Team 8, I think, or Team Asuma. They were getting their get back on him, Kakashi was there with them. Hidan was taken to the forest with Shikamaru. Shikamaru was like, nah, man, You're done. Hidan was like, you don't barely have chakra pool left. You have no chakra reserves, man. You know, you took me out here to die. You know, he cut him, or he thought he cut him. Shikamaru dodged the attack completely, shot some blood on him. Now, this blood came from Kakuzu's own heart, because Kakashi was able to get a sample of, the blood after he hit Kakuzu with a lightning blade to the chest, you know, Chidori to the chest. So then he was like, all right, cool. Now that I've done that, I'm going to try to kill you. But he was fooled by Shikamaru, like I said. And that was actually Kakuzu's blood. So when he stabbed his chest, trying to damage his heart, which he, actually damaged Kakuzu's heart, and he was like, damn, you bastard. But then Shikamaru used shadow stitching jutsu and stitch a whole bunch of paper bombs to him. And he was like, couldn't move or anything. He threw the lighter. Boom, boom, boom. He was all dismembered, body parts everywhere. And he's like, you can't stop me. I'm still alive. And he's like, this is your burial ground, 6 feet deep. That's the death. He went to sleep. Boom, boom, boom. He got buried. And that's where he remains. Now, he is technically still alive, actually, because he cannot die. However, will he ever return to Naruto verse? Probably not. And then the waves of Jashin, like, who the fuck is Jashin? Is this a creature from another place? Is it from, the Naruto world? How did this, immortality jutsu type of thing work? Where did it originate from? Like, how does it, like, actually, work? Ins and outs of it. But it was never expanded upon or anything. But he was kind of an interesting guy as far as, like, that jutsu. But he wasn't, like, the most powerful. He didn't have anything else. He was just a guy who loved to run around and kill people with the scythe. And he was useful. He did help Kakuzu out a lot. But that is a story of Hidan from the Akatsuki. Be cool, call in the corner.